the late spring of 2008 when I was 11 years old. The family and I had an excursion to Disneyland. We arranged our flight that was reserved for midnight on a Wednesday to set aside cash. Furthermore, my mother calculated my sisters and I would stay through the flight. My sisters were 8 and 5 at that point. The gatehouse was generally vacant as we sat tight for our flight. My mother went to go to the restroom with my most youthful sister, and a moment later my father advised me to stand by there and watch my other sisters. Well, he went to Triumph. Ultimately, a last-minute bit of food at the bistro as the moderately aged lady came and sat close to us. She put her hand on my back as she acted all eager to see us and inquired where our folks were. I informed her they would be right back. Then the moderately aged man came over as well and began acting similarly as effervescent, furthermore, tender towards us as though he knew us. The man then broadcasted that he just ran into my father at the bistro and at long last presented himself and the lady as our father's cousins. My sister and I taken a gander at one another and we both said hi. Actually, bashfully, the man connected his hand for my sister to snatch while the lady connected her hand for me to snatch. They advised us to follow them because they believed we should meet their children. My sister and I innocently got up, took their hands and followed them. The two began driving us out of the gatehouse, past to the bistro, down the steps, and towards the hall of the air terminal. When I understood they were driving us to the entry of the air terminal towards the parking area, I at last asked, "Where are we going to?" The lady checked out at me through her thick outline glasses and, with her brazen grin, said their children were outside by the vehicle. As we strolled outside into the dim parking garage, I took a gander at my sister and turned out to be super awkward. I broke my hand, liberated from the lady, and said we needed to return inside. While I am taking my sister's hand from the men, I seen the two took a gander at one another, their brazen grins both gone. The man gone rapidly to us, and afterward forcefully folded his arms over me, as the lady did likewise to my sister. They began to convey to us in a real sense, nearer to the parking area as me and my sister shouted. We heard hollering in the distance from two men who went out to the air terminal security. The frenzied pair let we go and ran faster than I'd at any point seen anybody run rapidly, vanishing into the parking garage. One of the men pursued them down, or possibly attempted to, while others chatted just a little, then driven us back into the air terminal, back to our guardians. Another sister, it had just been a couple of moments, and my mother was at that point crying like a child. Being that I was so youthful makes this a very abnormal, awkward memory to consider. It's additionally odd to imagine that I didn't have any idea any warnings go off when the two didn't give us their names. Hi guys, before you keep watching the video, if you want to send a personal true horror story of yours, please send it to me on my email, and I will contact you for sure. Also, don't forget to keep watching your video. It was minutes before loading onto my flight to North Carolina for a prospective employee meeting. The following day, it was on the blustery February night. Everybody was packaged up, also minding their own business. I was sitting in the terminal room, hanging tight for my trip to be called. It wasn't going to be an extremely bustling flight, since there weren't many individuals in the holding up region. Somebody plunked down 2 seats for me, which wasn't excessively peculiar itself. Yet it was a piece irritating thinking about a large portion of the seats were open. Yet it went from irritating to absolutely upsetting when I taken a gander at him to see him unusually gazing at me. I turned away and pretended not to care, yet I could perceive he was still taking a gander at me. Then he hung over to me. What's more, murmured near my ear that the 2 men sitting in a line across from me were going on a similar plane and we're anticipating seizing me once we landed in North Carolina. I didn't have the foggiest idea what to express other than whatever the weighty man then moved up and left simultaneously. My flight was called and I apprehensively loaded onto the plane while focusing to the 2 men. They plunked down in front of me also. As I strolled past them, drawing nearer my seat, the 2 of them gazed me down. At that second, I began to contemplate whether that man's cautioning was a couple of hours after the fact. We shown up to NC and on out of the plane and departing the air terminal. I carefully glanced around, attempting to recognize the 2 men when I was at long last outside in an obscurity cold parking area. I spotted, and the two men were looking their heads at me from around a red minivan. Furthermore, I think about when they saw me examining their heading. They took cover behind the van. I strolled back into the air terminal, stood by 30 minutes. I required a taxi, sat tight for it to pull front and center, and rode to in such countless inquiries. I don't know who that man was who cautioned me. I don't have any idea how he knew about those other two men, and I have no clue about what they were anticipating doing to me if they were hoping to seize me. So this happened 2 or 3 months earlier. I'm 25. I was at the airport in New York with 5 colleagues. We as a whole planned to fly down to Florida to spend the week in the seaside house. We had a few additional minutes to kill in the air terminal before we would get onto our flight, and I genuinely expected to go to the bathroom. All of a sudden, I was befuddled to see a line out the doorway for the washroom. I saw a janitor walking by, so I asked whether there was another bathroom nearby that wouldn't be so amassed. She left and let me in on. She shouldn't by and large be told people there was another washroom past the entrance. She was pointing it down the slide flight of steps and to the left. I expressed on account of her, since she was extremely incredible. Followed the direction she gave me. Sure enough, behind that entrance that no one would make sure to open was a little stairwell that drove down to a really faint slide section. It was tied to the point that if 2 people were to pass by each other, one individual would have to rest against the divider to make a room. I considered to be the washroom promptly to the doorway. It was unimaginably profound and challenging to push. Additionally, the lights were on inside the bathroom. Additionally, it was grimy in there. It was evident that nobody anytime genuinely came in there to clean. Now this is a little embarrassing to make reference to anyway. When I go to the washroom without any attempt at being subtle spots and large, endeavor to guarantee no other individual is close to maybe hear me going. So later, truly investigating the stoppage to see that it was void, I returned into the anteroom momentarily to cut a friend down. Both orientation aside, there was somebody staying close to the completion of the passage and a faint, dim piece of the entry. It was a disturbing sight to say the least. All in all, nothing remained except to pull clumsily my head indeed into the washroom and endeavored to envision we didn't see each other. I went into the logjam and just stayed there, biting my fingers momentarily, dreading the chance of that doorway opening, and of course it did. I saw the man's dull shoes onto the stoppage entrance as he walked to dial back near mine. He shut the doorway and thereafter there hushed up. No sound of the man loosening his fly or plunking down. Nothing. I got it. I didn't need to go anymore and went to open the stoppage doorway. That is the place where I rotated toward the sky and saw the man's head looking over the logjam, looking at me. I nearly had a cardiovascular disappointment as my yells weaved off the dividers with the little bathroom. I ran back up those damn advances, not that entrance, and subsequently casually walks around wrapped up to my associates. I was breathing with the utmost intensity. Be that as it may, nobody seemed to see. I didn't tell anyone, since it was embarrassing, and I didn't require my allies to disparage me in any way. I understand I derived that seems, by all accounts, to be maladroit. Now we continued to have our Florida outing. All partied hard. Clearly the contemplated that repulsive man tortured me every night that week.